You are on HOA rejected. The case file was not closed, it was hidden. You are out of warnings, and I am done being nice. Karen pointed at a missing agenda page and yelled that missing pages were not my business. I held my phone steady at chest height and let her keep talking. The flash drive in her other hand was supposed to contain proof, but she refused to hand it over. I could feel the weight of the flashlight clipped to my pocket and the hot afternoon sun pressing down on both of us. The violation notice on the clipboard between us had no readable text, but I knew exactly what it claimed. My car was supposed to be towed in 20 minutes for an unpaid fine I had already settled 2 weeks ago. I work as a shipping clerk. I keep receipts, signatures, and tracking numbers for everything. The Commons at Maplewood Association in Colorado Springs, Colorado, operates like a museum where they micromanage every blade of grass and call it standards. Jennifer Perez is the fines and enforcement coordinator, and she brags about collections at every board meeting. When my payment receipt showed as unpaid in the portal this morning, I knew it was not a mistake. The timestamp on the portal update was 3 days after I submitted payment, and the amount matched a backdated late fee structure I had never seen before. Jennifer stepped closer and tapped the clipboard. I have all day, and so does my fine meter. She smiled like she had already won. I glanced past her at the tow truck idling 30 feet away in the clubhouse parking lot. The driver leaned against the cab with his arms crossed, clearly impatient. I share the car with my sister, and a tow would strand both of us. I could not let that happen. I pulled up my bank app and showed her the cleared transaction. She barely looked at it. That is not in our system, and if it is not in our system, it did not happen. Her voice was loud enough that a passerby holding up a phone with the screen turned away slowed down to watch. I felt my phone storage warning buzz in my pocket. I was almost full, and I needed to back up video evidence before it got lost. Jennifer flipped to the second page of the clipboard and pointed at a line. Your appeal was denied as incomplete. I stared at the page. There was no explanation of what was missing, just a stamp and a signature. I asked her what I needed to include. She shrugged. That is not my job to tell you. The goalposts had just moved, and I could see it happening in real time. I asked her to show me the original violation notice. She handed me a photocopy with yesterday's date. I pulled my copy from my pocket. Mine was dated 2 weeks earlier. The violation descriptions were identical, but the issue dates did not match. I held both pages up side by side. She snatched hers back and said the printer sometimes messes up dates, and it does not matter because the fee still applies. That was when I remembered Marcus. 2 years ago, Marcus lived 3 doors down and got his truck towed over a parking violation he swore was backdated. He fought it for months and eventually gave up because the management company lost his records request. He moved out 6 months later. I had not thought about it in a long time, but the pieces suddenly felt connected. Same enforcement coordinator, same missing records, same impossible timeline. I told Jennifer I wanted to see the original notice file. She said it was archived, and I would need to submit a formal request. I asked how long that would take. She said up to 30 days. The tow driver honked once. Jennifer turned and waved at him like everything was settled. I stepped between her and the car. I told her I was not moving until she showed me the file or called off the tow. She leaned in close and said, "We can tow first and explain later. That is how enforcement works." The tow driver walked over and asked if we were good to go. I turned to him and asked if he had the actual signed authorization. He pulled a crumpled work order from his pocket. I asked if it included the vehicle identification number. He squinted at the page and said it was partially smudged. I told him that without a complete authorization, he could be liable if this turned out to be wrongful. He looked at Jennifer. She waved the clipboard and said she had all the paperwork. He asked to see it. She hesitated, then turned and walked toward her car. I pulled out my phone and started recording again. The passerby was still watching from the sidewalk. Jennifer came back with a folder and handed the driver a single sheet. He looked at it for a long time, then handed it back and said he was not hooking anything until the authorization matched the complaint. Jennifer's face went red. She told him she would report him to his supervisor. He shrugged and walked back to the truck. Jennifer turned back to me and said this was not over. I told her I agreed and I would see her at the next board meeting. She said I was not allowed to speak at meetings until my account was current. I said my account was current and I had proof. She said proof had to be submitted 72 hours in advance. I asked where that rule was written. She tapped the clipboard and said it was in the updated enforcement guidelines that were posted last month. I asked where they were posted. She said the clubhouse bulletin board. I had walked past that board a dozen times in the last month and never seen new guidelines. I walked away on purpose because I wanted her to follow and say more. She did. She yelled that I had until end of business today to submit a complete appeal or the fine would triple. I turned and asked what a complete appeal included. She listed 5 items I had never heard of before, including a notarized statement and photos of my parking space from 4 angles. I asked if that was in the enforcement guidelines. She said it was common sense. If you are enjoying this HOA chaos, smash that like button and subscribe for more wild neighborhood drama. The common sense defense was classic Jennifer. She used it every time someone questioned her process. I decided right then that I was going to find out what happened to Marcus and connect it to my case. I drove to the county clerk's office and pulled the HOA violation records for the last 3 years. They were public, and the clerk helped me print a full packet. It took 2 hours, but I found Marcus's case. The original notice was dated May 6th. The tow authorization was dated May 4th, 2 days before the notice. That was impossible unless someone backdated the notice after the tow. I made copies and drove straight to the management company office. The supervisor was a calm woman named Diane who had worked in HOA management for 15 years. I showed her the packet and explained the timeline problem. She went quiet for a long time, then asked if I had the original notice file. I said Jennifer told me it was archived and would take 30 days to retrieve. Diane picked up her phone and called the records room. She asked them to pull Marcus's file. They said it was marked as destroyed per retention policy. Diane frowned and said the retention policy was 7 years, not 2. She told them to check the destruction log. They put her on hold. While we waited, I asked Diane if there had been other complaints about backdated notices. She said she could not discuss other owners, but off the record there had been 3 formal disputes in the last 18 months that all involved timeline inconsistencies. She said the board had dismissed them as clerical errors. I asked if Jennifer handled all 3 cases. Diane nodded slowly. The records room came back on the line. They said the destruction log showed Marcus's file was destroyed in August, just 4 months after the tow. Diane asked who authorized it. They said Jennifer signed the authorization as enforcement coordinator. Diane thanked them and hung up. She looked at me and said this was a problem. I asked what she could do. She said she would need to escalate it to the board president, but the board president was Jennifer's close friend and had backed her on every dispute so far. I asked if there was anyone else. She said the only other option was a formal audit request, but that required a petition signed by 20% of homeowners. I left the management office and started texting neighbors. Most people ignored me. A few said they had their own complaints, but did not want to get involved. One neighbor, Sarah, responded immediately. She said her mother was fined last year for a landscaping violation that was later proven to be on the wrong property. Jennifer refused to refund the fine and told her mother to appeal it through the formal process, which took 6 months and cost more in notary fees than the original fine. Sarah said she would sign a petition and help me get more signatures. 2 days later, I was in the hardware store parking lot when Jennifer pulled up next to me. She got out and walked over holding a binder. I noticed she had her phone in her other hand. She said she heard I was spreading rumors about the association, and it needed to stop. I told her I was gathering facts, not rumors. She said facts required context, and I was twisting the timeline to make her look bad. I asked if she wanted to provide the correct timeline. She said the correct timeline was in the records, and if I kept harassing the management company, she would file a formal complaint against me for disruptive behavior. A couple walking past slowed down and watched. Jennifer raised her voice and said I was interfering with HOA operations, and it was a violation of the governing documents. I asked which section. She flipped open the binder and pointed at a highlighted paragraph. I leaned in and saw it was about contractors, not homeowners. I pointed that out. She snapped the binder shut and said she did not have time to educate me on basic rules. The couple was still watching. One of them asked if everything was okay. Jennifer smiled and said it was just a routine compliance discussion. I said it was not routine, and she was threatening me for asking questions. The couple exchanged a look and kept walking, but I saw one of them pull out their phone. Jennifer got back in her car and left. I stood there for a minute trying to process what just happened. My phone buzzed. Sarah sent me a message saying she had 9 signatures so far. I needed 53 total. It felt impossible, but I kept going. That weekend, I went door to door. Most people were polite, but uninterested. A few were openly hostile and said I was causing trouble for no reason. One older man named Ed told me he had been fined 3 times in 2 years for violations he never received notice about. He said the fines just appeared on his account, and when he challenged them, Jennifer told him the notices were hand-delivered, and if he did not get them, it was his responsibility to check the clubhouse board daily. Ed signed immediately and gave me 2 more names. By Monday, I had 31 signatures. I needed 22 more. That was when the surprise inspection happened. Jennifer showed up at my door with a clipboard like it was a crime scene. She said she received a complaint about my front yard and needed to document it. I asked who complained. She said complaints were confidential. I asked what the violation was. She walked around my yard taking photos and making notes. She pointed at a small garden hose coiled near the side gate and said it was visible from the street and violated the aesthetic standards. I asked where that rule was written. She said Section 12 of the landscaping addendum. I pulled up the governing documents on my phone and read Section 12. It was about tree removal, not hoses. She said I was reading the old version, and the updated addendum was posted in the clubhouse. I walked to the clubhouse. The bulletin board had the same documents as last month. No updated landscaping addendum. I took photos of the entire board and texted them to Diane. She responded within minutes and said there was no updated addendum on file. I asked if Jennifer was allowed to create new rules without board approval. Diane said absolutely not, and if Jennifer was enforcing undocumented rules, that was a serious governance issue. I asked if that was enough to trigger an audit without a petition. Diane said no, but it was enough to put Jennifer on formal notice. She said she would draft a letter to the board. That night I got an email from the association. It said my appeal hearing was scheduled for Thursday at 6 in the evening, and I had to submit all evidence and witness lists by Wednesday at noon. That gave me less than 48 hours. I called Diane. She said she did not schedule the hearing, and it was not on the official calendar. I asked who scheduled it. She said only Jennifer had access to the enforcement hearing calendar. I said this felt like a trap. Diane agreed, and said she would attend as a witness if I wanted. I said yes. I spent Tuesday gathering every document I had: payment receipts, violation notices, photos of the clubhouse board, text messages, the county records packet, Marcus's timeline mismatch, and screenshots of the portal showing my account status changing 3 days after I paid. I printed everything and put it in a 3-ring binder with tabbed sections. I also made a second copy and gave it to Sarah in case something happened to mine. Wednesday morning, I submitted my evidence packet to the management office. The receptionist stamped it and gave me a receipt. I asked if Jennifer had submitted her evidence. The receptionist said enforcement does not have to pre-submit. I asked if that was a written rule. She shrugged and said it was how hearings always worked. Wednesday afternoon, my phone rang. It was a number I did not recognize. I answered. A man said he was calling from the towing company, and they had a new authorization to tow my vehicle for unpaid fines. I said my fines were paid and under appeal. He said his dispatch log showed an active tow order effective immediately. I asked who authorized it. He said the HOA enforcement office. I told him to hold while I called Diane. He said he could not hold, and the truck was already on the way. I hung up and sprinted to the parking lot. The truck was already hooking the car. I yelled at the driver to stop. He ignored me. I stood in front of the truck. He got out and said I needed to move, or he would call the police. I told him to call them. Jennifer appeared from the clubhouse entrance. She walked over and said the tow was authorized, and I was interfering with official business. I pulled out my phone and called Diane. She answered on the first ring. I explained what was happening. She asked to speak to the driver. I handed him the phone. He listened for a minute, then handed it back and unhooked the car. Jennifer started yelling that Diane had no authority to cancel a tow. The driver said his supervisor told him to stand down until the dispute was resolved. Jennifer pulled out her own phone and called someone. I could hear her voice getting louder. A sheriff's deputy pulled into the lot. Jennifer waved him over and said I was trespassing and refusing to comply with HOA enforcement. The deputy asked for my ID. I handed it over. He asked if I lived here. I said yes and showed him my key fob and my driver's license with the address. He asked Jennifer if she had a formal trespass notice. She said no, but I was violating HOA rules. The deputy said that was a civil matter and not a police issue. Jennifer said I was creating a disturbance. The deputy looked around at the empty parking lot and said he did not see a disturbance. He handed me my ID back and told Jennifer to handle it through the HOA process. She stared at him like he had just betrayed her. The deputy left. The tow driver left. Jennifer stood there holding her phone and her binder. I asked if we were done. She said the hearing was still tomorrow, and if I did not show up, the fine would be automatic. I said I would be there. She walked away. I sat in my car for a long time trying to calm down. My phone buzzed. Sarah texted that she had 47 signatures. We needed 6 more. Thursday morning, I woke up to an email saying the hearing location had changed. It was now in a conference room at a business center across town, not the clubhouse. I called Diane. She said she was not notified of the change, and it was not on the official calendar. I asked if this was legal. She said it was irregular, and possibly a violation of the open meeting requirements. I forwarded her the email. She said she would try to attend, but the new location was 30 minutes away, and she had another commitment at 6. I felt the walls closing in. I showed up at the business center at 5:45. The conference room was small and windowless. Jennifer was already there with 2 other board members I did not recognize. There was no name placard, no recording equipment, no sign-in sheet. I asked if this was an official hearing. Jennifer said it was a preliminary review. I asked why the email called it a hearing. She said the terms were interchangeable. I pulled out my phone and started recording. Jennifer said recording was not allowed. I asked where that rule was written. She said it was implicit in the privacy policy. I asked to see the privacy policy. She said it was available on request. One of the board members, an older woman, asked me to present my case. I opened my binder and started walking through the timeline. I showed the payment receipt, the portal timestamp mismatch, the 2 violation notices with different dates, and the county records showing Marcus's case. Jennifer interrupted and said Marcus's case was irrelevant. I said it established a pattern. She said patterns required statistical evidence, and one case was not a pattern. The older woman asked to see the county records. I handed them over. She read for a minute, then looked at Jennifer and asked why the tow authorization was dated before the notice. Jennifer said the clerk probably entered the dates wrong. The older woman said that seemed unlikely. Jennifer said clerical errors happen, and it did not prove anything. I pulled out my phone and showed them the portal screenshots. The older woman asked Jennifer to explain why the account status changed 3 days after payment. Jennifer said the payment took time to process. I said the bank cleared it same day. Jennifer said the bank and the portal were different systems. The older woman asked how long processing normally takes. Jennifer said it varied. The older woman looked frustrated. The second board member, a man in his 50s, asked if I had submitted the notarized statement and the 4-angle photos. I said those requirements were not in the governing documents. He said Jennifer told them it was standard procedure. I asked where it was written. He looked at Jennifer. She opened her binder and flipped through pages, then said it was in the enforcement manual. I asked to see it. She said the manual was internal and not available to homeowners. The older woman said that did not sound right. Jennifer said it was how enforcement had always worked. I asked if I could call Diane as a witness. Jennifer said witnesses had to be pre-approved. I said I submitted her name in my evidence packet. Jennifer said she never received a witness list. I pulled out my submission receipt. It was time-stamped Wednesday at 10 in the morning. Jennifer said the receipt did not prove the packet included a witness list. I asked the receptionist to pull the packet. Jennifer said the receptionist was not available. The older woman said this was getting ridiculous and we should just review the evidence. I laid out the entire timeline. Payment on the 15th. Portal update on the 18th showing unpaid. Late fee structure that did not match the published schedule. Violation notice dated 2 weeks ago. Second violation notice dated yesterday. Marcus's tow authorization dated before his notice. Jennifer's refusal to provide the original file. The destruction log showing Marcus's file was destroyed early. Jennifer's surprise inspection with a rule that did not exist. The tow attempt yesterday. All of it. The older woman asked Jennifer to respond. Jennifer said I was cherry-picking facts and ignoring context. She said the payment system had a known lag and everyone dealt with it. She said Marcus's case was resolved and he accepted the outcome. She said the hose violation was legitimate and the rule was in the updated addendum. She said the tow was authorized because my account was delinquent. She said everything she did was by the book. I asked which book. She said the governing documents. I asked her to cite the section. She said she did not have to justify herself to me. The older woman said actually she did, because that was the point of a hearing. Jennifer's face went red. She slammed her binder shut and said she had been enforcing rules for 6 years and no one had ever questioned her integrity before. The older woman said maybe they should have. Jennifer stood up and said she was not going to sit here and be attacked. She walked out. The two board members looked at each other. The older woman said they would need to recess and reconvene with the full board present. I asked when that would be. She said she would coordinate with Diane and let me know. The man said he was uncomfortable making a decision without more information. I asked what information he needed. He said he wanted to see the enforcement manual and the destruction log. I said Jennifer controlled both. He said that was a problem. I left the business center feeling like I had won a battle, but not the war. My phone buzzed. Sarah texted that she had 54 signatures. We had enough for the audit petition. I called Diane and told her. She said she would submit it to the board tomorrow. I asked what would happen to the hearing. She said the hearing was technically invalid because it was not properly noticed, and the location change violated open meeting rules. I asked if that meant the fine was dismissed. She said it should be, but Jennifer would probably appeal. I said of course she would. Friday morning I woke up to an email from the board president. It said the hearing findings would be delayed pending further review, and in the meantime my account was frozen and I could not use any common facilities. I called Diane. She said she did not send that email, and the board president did not have authority to freeze accounts without a vote. I asked who the board president was. She said his name was Tom, and he was Jennifer's neighbor. I said that explained everything. I forwarded the email to Sarah and asked her to share it with everyone who signed the petition. Within an hour, the neighborhood group chat was blowing up. People were asking why I was being targeted. Others were sharing their own stories about Jennifer. One person posted a screenshot of a fine notice with a date that did not match the calendar. Another person said they got a violation for a tree that was on HOA common property, not their lot. The momentum was building. Saturday afternoon, I got a text from Ed. He said Jennifer just showed up at his door with a new violation notice for his mailbox post. He said the post had been there for 12 years and suddenly it was a problem. He asked if I thought it was retaliation. I said absolutely. I told him to document everything and send it to Diane. He said he already did. Sunday morning, Diane called. She said the audit petition was submitted and the board had 30 days to respond. She also said Tom sent her a formal complaint accusing me of harassment and demanding I be fined for disruptive behavior. I asked what the complaint said. She said it claimed I was spreading false information and interfering with enforcement operations. I asked if she believed it. She said no, and she told Tom the complaint was baseless. She said Tom threatened to fire the management company if they did not support Jennifer. Diane said her supervisor was now involved, and they were considering terminating the contract with the association. I asked what that meant for me. She said it meant the board would have to hire a new management company, and the new company would have access to all the records, including the ones Jennifer tried to hide. I said that sounded good. She said it would take months, and in the meantime, Jennifer would still be enforcement coordinator. I said we needed to move faster. Monday morning, I went to the county administration building and filed a formal complaint with the HOA oversight office. Colorado has limited HOA regulation, but there are rules about records retention and meeting notices. I submitted everything: the timeline, the destruction log, the invalid hearing notice, the location change, Tom's account freeze email, and the retaliation against Ed. The clerk said they would investigate and contact me within 2 weeks. That afternoon, Jennifer showed up at my door again. She had a new clipboard and a printed packet. She said the board reviewed my case and determined the fine was valid. She handed me the packet. I flipped through it. It was full of screenshots and highlighted sections, but none of it addressed the timeline mismatch or the missing records. I asked if this was the official decision. She said yes. I asked where the vote minutes were. She said the vote was in executive session and minutes were confidential. I asked if executive sessions were allowed for enforcement decisions. She said they were allowed for personnel and legal matters. I said this was neither. She said it involved potential legal action, so it qualified. I told her the decision was invalid and I would be appealing to the State Oversight Office. She smiled and said good luck with that. I said I already filed the complaint this morning. Her smile disappeared. She asked what I filed. I said everything. She said I had no right to involve outside agencies in internal HOA matters. I said I had every right when the HOA violated state law. She said I did not know what I was talking about. I said the records retention statute was pretty clear, and destroying files early was a violation. She said the destruction was authorized. I said by her, and that was the problem. She stepped closer and said I was making a big mistake. I said the mistake was hers. She said I would regret this. I said I already regretted buying into an association run by someone who thought rules did not apply to her. She turned and walked away. I watched her get in her car and leave. My phone buzzed. Sarah texted that the neighborhood group chat was now over 200 messages, and people were demanding a special meeting. Tuesday, the management company sent an email to all homeowners, announcing a special meeting for Thursday night to discuss governance and enforcement procedures. The email said all board members were required to attend, and homeowners could submit questions in advance. I submitted 3 questions. Why was my payment marked unpaid 3 days after it cleared? Why was Marcus's file destroyed early? Why was the hearing location changed without proper notice? Wednesday night, Sarah called. She said she heard from a friend on the board that Jennifer was planning to resign at the meeting and blame everything on the management company. I asked if that would work. Sarah said it might if no one had proof. I said I had proof. She said then we needed to make sure everyone saw it. Thursday night, the clubhouse meeting room was packed. Every seat was full, and people were standing along the walls. Diane was there with her supervisor. Tom was at the head table with Jennifer and 2 other board members. I sat in the 3rd row with my binder on my lap. Sarah was next to me with her phone ready. Tom called the meeting to order and said they were here to address concerns about enforcement procedures. He said the board took all complaints seriously and they had conducted a thorough review. He said they found some administrative irregularities, but nothing that rose to the level of misconduct. He said Jennifer had agreed to implement new training and documentation protocols going forward. He said the board considered the matter resolved. Someone in the back yelled that resolved was not good enough. Tom said public comment would come later. Another person said they wanted to hear the irregularities explained. Tom said the details were confidential. A third person said confidential was how we got here in the first place. The room erupted in overlapping voices. Tom banged his gavel and said he would clear the room if people could not be respectful. I raised my hand. Tom ignored me. I stood up. Tom said I was out of order. I said I had submitted questions and I wanted them answered. Tom said my questions were addressed in the review. I asked him to read the findings. He said the findings were an executive session. I said executive sessions did not apply to enforcement decisions. He said the board determined they did. I said the board was wrong. Jennifer stood up and said I had been harassing her for weeks and spreading lies about her work. She said I paid my fine late and refused to take responsibility. She said I filed a baseless complaint with the state to avoid consequences. She said I turned the neighborhood against her and she was done being the scapegoat. She said she was resigning effective immediately. She pulled a folded letter from her pocket and handed it to Tom. The room went silent. Tom unfolded the letter and read it. He looked uncomfortable. Someone in the front row asked if Jennifer was seriously walking away without answering for anything. Jennifer said there was nothing to answer for, and the management company had failed to support her. Diane's supervisor stood up and said that was not accurate. He said the management company had raised concerns about Jennifer's record-keeping multiple times, and the board had dismissed them. Tom said that was not relevant. The supervisor said it was extremely relevant and the management company was terminating the contract because the board refused to address compliance issues. The room exploded again. People were shouting questions at Tom and Jennifer. Tom tried to bang the gavel, but no one was listening. I opened my binder and pulled out the county records packet. I held it up and said I had proof that Jennifer backdated violation notices and destroyed records early. Jennifer said I was lying. I said the destruction log had her signature. She said the log was internal and I had no right to it. I said the county clerk gave it to me because it was a public record. She said I misunderstood what I was reading. I said I understood perfectly, and so would everyone else. I walked to the front and handed the packet to Tom. He flipped through it. His face went pale. I pointed at Marcus's timeline. I pointed at the destruction log signature. I pointed at the portal screenshots showing my account status changing 3 days after payment. Tom said he needed time to review this. I said he had 30 seconds because I was about to read it out loud. Jennifer tried to grab the packet. Tom pulled it away. She said the packet was incomplete and misleading. I said she was welcome to explain the timeline mismatch. She said timelines were complicated and clerical errors happened. I said clerical errors did not sign destruction logs. She said I was twisting everything. I said I was reading her own paperwork. Someone in the crowd yelled to let him read it. Tom hesitated, then started reading the Marcus timeline out loud. The room got quiet. When he finished, someone asked if Jennifer really destroyed records 4 months after a case. Tom said that was what the log showed. Another person asked why. Tom said he did not know. Jennifer said the retention policy was confusing. I said the retention policy was 7 years, and she knew that. The older woman from the hearing stood up. She said she was on the board, and she had reviewed my evidence at the preliminary hearing. She said she had serious concerns about Jennifer's procedures. She said she recommended a full audit, and Tom shut her down. Tom said that was not true. The older woman said it absolutely was true, and she had the email to prove it. She pulled out her phone and read the email out loud. Tom had written that an audit would be expensive and disruptive, and the board should trust Jennifer's experience. The room turned on Tom. Jennifer stood up and said she was not going to sit here and be humiliated. She grabbed her bag and her phone. A gust of wind from the open side door caught her printed packet and sent it airborne across the room. Pages scattered everywhere. People scrambled to pick them up. Someone held up a page and said it was a blank violation template with her signature already on it. Another person found a page with 3 identical complaint descriptions and different dates. Jennifer yelled that those were drafts. Someone said drafts did not have signatures. Jennifer walked out. The door slammed behind her. Tom tried to regain control. He said the meeting was adjourned. The older woman said the meeting was not adjourned until they voted on the audit petition. Tom said the petition was under review. She said the petition had 54 signatures and state law required a response. Tom said 30 days. She said tonight. The crowd started chanting. Tom looked at the other board members. They both nodded. Tom said fine, they would vote. The vote was 4-1 in favor. Tom abstained. Diane's supervisor said the management company would coordinate the audit, and it would be completed within 60 days. He also said the management company would be filing a formal report with the State Oversight Office, documenting the compliance failures. Tom said that was not necessary. The supervisor said it was legally required. Tom sat down and did not say anything else. I walked out of the meeting feeling like I could breathe for the first time in weeks. Sarah caught up with me and said that was incredible. I said it was not over. She said it was close enough. My phone buzzed. It was an email from the County Oversight Office. They said they were opening an investigation based on my complaint, and they would need to interview Jennifer and review all enforcement records. I showed Sarah. She laughed and said Jennifer's worst nightmare just came true. 3 weeks later, the audit results were released. The auditor found 37 cases with timeline inconsistencies, 15 cases with missing original notices, and 8 cases where files were destroyed early. Jennifer's signature was on every destruction authorization. The auditor also found that Jennifer had been applying a late fee structure that was never approved by the board. The total amount of improper fees collected over 3 years was over $18,000. The board voted to refund every affected homeowner and to retract all enforcement actions that were based on incomplete records. My fine was dismissed, and I got a written apology from the board. Jennifer's own selective enforcement got documented in the minutes. The new enforcement coordinator was a retired paralegal named Karen, who actually read the governing documents before issuing violations. The board implemented a new records policy with mandatory retention logs and third-party audits every 2 years. Tom resigned after the audit, and the older woman became board president. The State Oversight Office finished their investigation 2 months later. They found that Jennifer had violated records retention laws and issued a formal reprimand. They also fined the association $5,000 for failing to maintain proper documentation. The association sued Jennifer to recover the fine and the refund costs. I heard she settled out of court, but I do not know the terms. Ed got his mailbox fine dismissed. Sarah's mother got a full refund. Marcus reached out after he heard about the audit and said he wished he had pushed harder 2 years ago. I told him it was not too late to file a complaint. He said he would think about it. I still live in the Commons at Maplewood Association. The new board is not perfect, but they follow the rules, and they do not make up new ones when they feel like it. I keep my receipts, and I check the portal every week. My phone storage is backed up daily. I learned that sometimes you have to fight the system to fix it, and sometimes the system fights back, but if you have proof and you do not quit, you can win. I will be back with another HOA story soon.